Richard Branson. You ended up on Necker Island with him. And from what I understand and what I read of you writing about it, you had a pretty bloody good time. How did this all come about, and just how competitive is he?
This may be the highlight of my decade, and we're not even halfway through the decade yet. This is an insane story.
Hello and welcome, Budri Gamawara from the Gadigal Lands here in Sydney. It's time for Startup 360. I'm Simon Thompson, and you is?
Magella Campbell.
Great to have you here. Ep 2 of us,
Yeah.
but of course, episode 16 of Startup 360. The show from startupdaily.net, all about tech and the people behind it. More founder fun than founder mode. Welcome to winter. How's yours going? Silverfish eating your jumpers, you've noticed as you've taken them out?
Yeah, I'm not dealing well with the winter, I'll be honest. I'm running out of clothes really quickly and
Mind
jumpers.
you, it's Sydney. It's like it really doesn't get that cold, although it has been a little bit single digits this week.
Yeah.
But I kind of welcome the cold, and my wife's from Melbourne, so it's her chance to drag out the clothes that you otherwise never get to wear up here.
That's true. I just want to know why it's always so cold in houses. Like, it's just, I don't know if your house is the same, but my house is just constantly super cold, no matter what. It's like 3 degrees colder than it is outside.
It's because we never got particularly good at designing for the Australian environment. I hope we're getting better at it in more modern houses. Mine's about 100 years old, so I know that feeling. Works well in summer.
It's great in summer.
But
Yeah, gotta make a
slightly
choice.
bigger challenge. Before we go any further, I do want to say that Startup 360 is supported by Vanta, helping startups unlock market opportunities through automated compliance. Thank you to Vanta. We have 2 amazing guests today.
So great.
Do you want to reveal?
Yes. So first up, we have Christie Jenkins, who is Managing Director of Techstars. Incredible. I have so many questions about how she fits it all in.
Amazing sports star, loves to hang out with Richard Branson on Necker Island. Such a cool career and life. Startup founder along the way as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of what Christie does. And then an old mate of my old show, Startup Daily TV, Justin Westnich from Vloggy.
Yeah.
He's coming into it. That is such a cool little business. And I'm going to put it to him, but I reckon he kind of created TikTok before TikTok.
Honestly, I think there's some grounds to that.
Yep.
He also invented the word vlog, or like video blog.
Did he?
Yeah,
Was that
in
him?
2006 on YouTube. Like he like coined it first.
Oh my gosh, he should just get $1 from every time we say it, and he'd already be a billionaire.
Startup funding secured.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. Yes. You just have to monetize terminology. All right, big week this week. Of course, the big news on Startup Daily was Amber, the electricity company, raising $45 million. Congrats to them. Big European fund in there, but I know Square Peg and a few of the others also chipped in once more. And they're going global, which is great news. But I do want to talk about one of the other stories I did, because I know it's been incredibly popular with our audience, and that's about the New Zealand startup founders and what they get paid. An amazing report that looked into how much Kiwi founders are getting. The New Zealand Founder Pay Report 2025, which has been put together by LiveRem and Oxygen Advisors, analysed payroll data from Kiwi startups, anywhere between 1 million in revenue or less than, and 10 million plus, up to 100 employees. I don't know if I should be jealous or not, but, I've been working in the charity sector known as journalism for a long time. But look, first of all, the important thing to know is it does take around about 29 months to get your first paycheck as a founder. So you've got to be patient. And it's nearly 2.5 years.
Yeah, it's just over 2.5 years.
But then it does okay. The average was around about 195,000 New Zealand, which is around about 182K in Australian.
Yep.
And then it goes, that was the median figure. The average was 205,000 New Zealand, so, 200K Australian. And then it gets really interesting, because the average salary under 3 million in revenue was 146K, but it doubles when you get to 10 mil in revenue. So if you're looking for an incentive for revenue, it's like, bring in the bucks, get paid some of them back. So,
Simple maths.
And I think it would be really interesting to see what the story is here in Australia. But they did talk to some really prominent Kiwi startups about what's going on. And I just thought it was really fascinating because it helps set expectations. And there was a point that Kathleen Webber, who is the CEO and co-founder of LiveRem, said that this is a bit of a taboo topic. So, everyone's... Do you find this happens at fish burners? Everyone kind of sidles up and goes, "Are you getting paid yet? How's it going?"
Yeah, I think it's definitely a thing. I mean, people often get criticized for paying themselves. Like, as a founder, everyone's just, like, sort of has this rhetoric that you should be investing every last dollar back into the business. But I mean, I don't know if you have this on your LinkedIn feed all the time. I always get, like, people taking, like, hot takes on this. Does that come up on your feed, or?
LinkedIn is all hot takes. Not a lot of
This is like a special breed of hot take.
Lots of hot takes.
Absolutely. I think it's like it's such obviously a personal thing, but like everyone really, I don't know why it's so highly criticized. I can understand obviously investing back, but you got to look after yourself. You still got bills to pay, mortgages, those things.
The report does go on with some, and I cite some of the comments made by founders, but in the end, it comes down to mental health and sustainability too. There is a limit to especially if you have a family, you're trying to look after your partner and your kids and all of those things, and you've still got to pay your rent or your mortgage.
Absolutely.
So, yes, there's a long-term hopeful equity payoff, and it talked about that too, around about 5 to 7 years for an exit. But that's a fairly long payoff, and you can't do that. Whereas when you do have the pay and the incentives, that's a good motivation to keep making the company successful.
Absolutely. Starting a startup's a marathon. It's not a sprint, and you got to be here for the long yards at the end of the day. And so looking after yourself is something that's part of that needs to be more, I feel like, more widely recognised for sure. We
can talk to Christie a little later on about marathons and sprints.
Marathons, yeah.
But of course, AI again is in the news this week. One of the stories that caught my eye, because I'm increasingly starting to think about consent. It's happening with training, of course, and people are very unhappy about their IP being stolen by the open AIs of the world. But there was a story in the Daily Telegraph this week about a new AI app where you upload an image of yourself and then another person, and you can have them kissing. I mean, this kind of is now, and the concerns here are it could be used to blackmail children and all sorts of weird things. But I'm also just kind of thinking about that fake porn stuff, and
it's awful.
It's wild and terrible. Old mate of Startup Daily's Dr. Dimitrios Salampasis from Swinburne University said this is a new frontier in the erosion of consent, the commoditisation of identity, and the weaponisation of personal imagery, particularly for children and young people. It's kind of horrifying, isn't it?
I just want to know why this exists. Like, who put time into building this and saying this is a good idea? It's just weird.
Well, you kind of know human nature.
Yeah,
in some
maybe I'm being a little bit too.
I know we live in the optimistic side of the startup sector, but there are those who kind of do weaponize things, and this is where AI gets very interesting, because whilst there are a lot of people talking about responsible and ethical AI, of course it's being used by scammers and a bunch of others. Like Meta is going to allow people to use AI to do ads and generate ads, and my comment on that was great. So we're going to get better quality scam ads for crypto scams. Thanks, Meta. Going to be wonderful. My boss Koshi and Twiggy Forrest and everyone else is going to be doing high quality generative AI scam ads for crypto on Facebook.
Bring it on.
Yeah, can't wait. But someone who did take a very serious look at this week, Mary Meeker, her AI report came out, of course, from Bond Capital. You curling up this weekend under the doona and reading all 320 pages?
I think it was 340.
340? Oh,
don't want to cut
I must
it short.
have skipped a couple at the end. But it is really interesting. She goes back, she talks about Alibaba, Google's founding mission, Facebook's founding mission, 21 years ago now. Fast forward to today, and the world's organised, connected and accessible information is being supercharged by artificial intelligence, accelerating computing power and semi-borderless capital, all driving massive change, she says. She's always been one of those people who people look to as a guru and a guide to what's happening next in tech. And And she goes on to talk about OpenAI and ChatGPT and the user usage monetization metrics, and calls it the history's biggest overnight success, and then puts in brackets 9 years post-founding. But of course, she has seen this incredible revolution. She talks about two increasingly hefty forces, technological and geopolitical, which are intertwining as part of this. I kind of get the sense that for someone who normally is quite good at seeing the future, she's not quite clear about how this is going to play out. And as an investor, do you hedge your bets? And as a human being, do you just kind of trying to figure out whether you're going to go on the Elon Musk side, where 1 minute he's saying he's terrified and it's going to kill us all, and the next minute he's sort of raising billions to do exactly the same thing?
It's such an evolving landscape at the moment. I don't think anyone's really going to know, which is a little bit scary, of course. But I think it's going to take some time for the dust to settle to really understand what's going to happen, I suppose.
She says in the overview, the magic of watching AI do your work for you feels like the early days of email and web search, technologies that fundamentally changed our world. The better, faster, cheaper impacts of AI seem just as magical, but even quicker. And then she says, no doubt, these are also dangerous and uncertain times. But a long-term case for optimism for AI is based on the idea that intense competition and innovation, increasingly accessible compute, rapidly rising global adoption of AI-infused technology, and thoughtful and calculated leadership can foster sufficient trepidation and respect that in turn could lead to mutually assured deterrence. So she does end up on an optimistic note. For some, the evolution of AI will create a race to the bottom. For others, it will create a race to the top. So let's hope for the top.
Hoping and praying.
Speaking of the top, let's get someone at the absolute top of their game in. Let's bring in Christie Jenkins as our first guest on Startup 360. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Startup 360. We are joined with Christie Jenkins. Christie, how are you?
I'm amazing. How are you?
Very well. Excited to have you on. Love to know a little bit about you and your background.
Sure. The TLDR. I was a pro athlete first and foremost. So I've played 3 different sports, a very random mix of trampolining, CrossFit and beach volleyball. But I was number 1 in Australia, top 10 in the world in all 3. And then I have had a career in startups and investing, which is why we're here today. And so I used to be an investor at Blackbird. I've been pretty involved in growing athletic ventures. I moved to the US and had my own startup that I co-founded, which involved buying professional soccer teams. And I've just moved back to Australia to take the managing director role to run the Techstars Startup Accelerator.
So exciting.
That is kind of fun. And can I just say you have the coolest Nikes in the world?
Yeah,
you look like a woman who is ready to sprint to her next program, which you're doing at the moment, because I think it's Friday today. So Techstars officially closes its applications on Wednesday next week, the 11th of June. So get cracking. Have you got anyone good at fishies that you should be sending?
Always. I've got a big plan tonight. I'm going to be making the rounds this afternoon, making sure as many are getting through.
So I do want you to give a bit of a plug for Techstars because it's its 3rd year. This is your first one as MD. But what is it that you love about what you do there and what Techstars does? Because it's a pretty big brand and it's exciting to have it here in Sydney.
I love what I do. My background's sport, right? And I've always thought that I've played 3 sports and some of them I started pretty late. Or, if you start a sport in your 20s as an athlete, you are old. And so how do you get good very, very fast? Because you're competing against people that have played for more than a decade. Mm-hmm. And the answer was really just 3 things. You need a great coach, you need to train with people better than you, and you need a killer work ethic. Mm-hmm. And then when I came to the startup sector, I was like, okay, well, what's the equivalent for a startup founder that wants to really, push their growth to the next level? You need great coaches, you need to train or surround yourself with people better than you, and you need a killer work ethic. And, my job running an accelerator is to provide the first 2. The work ethic's up to the founders.
Awesome.
I love that.
And in terms of who you've got, have you got a whole lot of applications already?
Yeah.
Just a few
and
days to go.
And some I'm super psyched about too.
Excellent. So how many are you going to choose in the end? Are you already sort of saying, can we put a couple more in or...
We're going to back
What's the plan?
12.
12.
So 12 is the fixed number. That's what we've got the funding to back.
Yep.
We're giving US $120,000 to every founding team, which is pretty nice with the current exchange rate.
That's
Let's
about
say that.
180,000, yes.
190
in dollary dues.
If you've ever tried to buy a coffee recently in the US, you're in for a rude shock. And then, we obviously run a 13-week accelerator program. So that's really about doing what it says on the box, accelerating the founders with the mentoring, with the support. It's not just money, right?
Absolutely. I was going to really narrow in, you're talking on those 3 points, but people spend their whole lives trying to be the best at one thing, and you've come number one at 3 different things and then made a transition to a really successful career in obviously tech and startups and of course investing. I was going to ask, what's the secret to fitting it all in? Like, when do you sleep? When do you rest? How do you do it?
I feel like I just blurred my social and private life with my professional life because I don't really have time for both. But that's cool because if you think about the people I like hanging out with, I love athletes because they are this crazy breed of people that are like, I'm going after this ambitious goal with super low odds of success that'll take 20 years of sacrifice and pain and suffering. And then you come to startups and you're like, wow, here's a whole bunch of people that are like, I have this ambitious goal with low odds of success and 20 years of pain and suffering. I'm like, hey, they're my people. Like, I want to hang out with them all the time. And so like my friends and my work and my sport are all filled with people that I want to spend my time with. And so I don't have a separate social life that I make time for. I just have my life. It's all together.
I love that. It's a great hack.
You've kind of answered the question I wanted to ask about that relationship and the parallels from sport that you bring across to founders, the similarities in it. But what are the things that really stick out for you in terms of discipline? Because to me, the other big challenge is setting a goal and then how do you get there? Because, as anyone knows, on New Year's Day, we set goals around the gym and other bits and pieces. And by the end of January, you're back on the beers. Maybe it's just me. But, we tend to let things slide a little bit.
Yeah. How long do you have, Simon? Okay. Like the number one thing I say around this is standards are more powerful than goals. And so we set goals and they're aspirational and that's lovely and they're exciting and they give us that juice of motivation at the beginning. But as you say, when it's 4 a.m. and your alarm goes off and it's 2 degrees outside, you don't feel like going to the gym. And so standards are much more powerful, and our standard goals are what we aspire to achieve, and standards are the minimum level that we would tolerate. Like, we wouldn't slip below that. And so how do you set standards and hold them? Well, you set them with other people, because you feel an emotion when you exceed a standard and you feel an emotion when you fail to meet a standard. And humans are hardwired to fit in and belong. If you get kicked out of the tribe, that's death. Mm-hmm. And so we want to fit in and belong. And so what you notice in sport, I used to go and train with the boys, or I used to go and train with the age group older than me. And that allowed me to have my standard become their standard, right? I naturally conform to the group around me. And so what is the group that sits around you? What's the standard they hold? And that's how you hold the discipline, because their standard becomes your standard.
Or as they say in the Swans, no dickheads. That's where they set the standard.
Yeah, that's a behavioural standard, right?
That's awesome. I was going to actually ask about, obviously, your role, Techstars, being mentorship, having coaches throughout your athletic career. What's the best bit of advice you've got from a coach or a mentor that sort of helped you?
Whew. It's so hard to pick one. I've had phenomenal coaches, and certainly growing up, like, I listened to my coaches more than my parents, especially as a teenager. I had a coach when I was trampolining. I was very lucky to be in a club with great coaches, but there was an accident in the trampoline club where one of the older athletes fell, landed on his head from 10 meters in the air doing a new trick. And I remember him like laying on the trampoline and saying, I can't feel my legs, can't feel my legs. And my coach like leaped up onto the trampoline, was holding his hand, the ambulance came. And that athlete has never walked again. He's in a wheelchair today. And my coach took it extremely rough and walked out of the gym and didn't come back. And it's very hard to replace a trampoline coach, not a skill set that's common. And the club brought in this guy that came from the circus. He mostly cared about having fun, didn't really prep us for comps. And about a year later, my coach walked back with the same athlete. And so that athlete that fell, who's in a wheelchair today, his name's John. So he is a trampoline coach today, so he came back to coach. But my coach came back, and what it made me realize was like the tough coach that gives you the harsh feedback is actually the one that cares about you. And so like when we had the fun coach that everyone's like, he's fun to hang out with, I'm like, I didn't improve. It's the coach that cares about you, the coach that gives you hard feedback, and the coach that comes back after the hard things. Like that's really a sign of care.
That's awesome. That's really great.
So maybe my son has a point when I used to coach him in AFL and sort of say the most important thing is to have fun. I was doing it wrong, but I only went to a certain level.
You know what? Winning is fun.
Yeah, winning
That's
is
true.
fun.
Yeah.
But I do want to follow up on that notion of fun. What is the Christie Jenkins idea of fun? How do you express that? How do you do it?
I'm a bit of a sucker for type 2 fun, where it's like, this is hard. We're all suffering together. Isn't it awesome? I don't know if you like that. Like my vacations are hiking around, 300 kilometres in Patagonia.
Yep.
I'm sure that's what you like to do on your holidays too.
I've narrowed it down to probably 30, but, yes.
Yeah, same
Still
difference.
love climbing a mountain.
So I'm a sucker for that kind of fun. I think, but all of the joy in life comes from doing things with other people,
Yep.
right? And so beach, people always ask me like, what's your favourite sport? Trampolining, CrossFit, beach volleyball. And I'm like, well, it's not CrossFit. That's just straight up suffering. And so it is. It's really like who can just redline it for the longest. And beach volleyball, you have a partner on the court. And
Yep.
so like you do a great point and they're just there cheering you on. They do a great point. Like you get the reflected joy from them. You get to travel together, hang out together. And so who are you doing it with?
Yep. That's exactly the thing about travel for me. And there are occasions where it's like my wife will say, yeah, you can do it on your own. It's like, I don't want to do it on my own. I want to be able to turn around to someone and say, isn't this amazing?
Yeah. Who's going to take your photo?
I think we've all been trained to do that, haven't we?
That's great. Any type of thing when you're having high performance and being a really driven person, it's always about pushing forward to that next goal. What sort of signals do you sort of find that when you see it's time to step back, when you're actually saying, you know what, it's actually probably not the right time to move forward?
This is a really hard question. I've retired from 3 sports and you would think I'd be better at it, but it was still incredibly tough every time. What I realized for me is that my passion for sport is tied to a sense of progress. So as soon as I didn't feel like I still had significant room to improve, that was when I called time on the sport. It's different for different people. But when you speak to athletes, and I think founders are extremely similar in this mindset, who have retired from their sport or stepped back from their company, there's a couple of universal things. One, everyone thinks that what they're feeling is unique. It's definitely not. 2, everybody felt they left something on the table. And so these groups of people are extremely future orientated. We set goals, we believe we can get them, and you have to have this unreasonable level of belief that you can get those goals to do these ambitious things. And so everybody always had a goal left in front of them that they believed they could have achieved when they walked away. So we left something on the table. And then I think third, identity is very challenging in that I'm an athlete and I've told myself that for 30 years and then suddenly I'm not. Who am I? And do I still matter? And then I go and look at another career. It's like, what am I going to do next? And not only am I not good, I'm starting right at the bottom, but everybody ahead of me is 10 years ahead of me because I've been out here playing sport. And so you've gone from being world-class mastery to a complete beginner again. And so there are many challenges with retirement. But for me, the progress is the sense that tells me when it's time to keep going or step back.
On that side, I want to talk about the investment aspect of you because, of course, you were with Blackbird and then with Matt DeBurr as he built Athletic Ventures. Tell us about that experience and what you learned from that side of the equation, because in some ways investing is almost like the coaching side of startups.
Yeah, my preference, Blackbird's amazing in that they do every kind of investing, right? Every stage, every vertical. It was incredible training ground to see what I liked. And turns out what I like is the very, very, very early stage. I like to back the founder and the person And the later stage you go, the more it's about the spreadsheet and the traction and the fundamentals. And so here I am running an accelerator now because of that learning. And I think the way we teach investing is quite interesting. We've always called it an apprenticeship model, but I think that's a little bit lazy in terms of our thinking of how we train someone. You go to sport and you have a very systematic view of here's how you get from A to B to C to D. And we come to investing, and the most common advice for new investors is go and take 1,000 founder meetings and eventually you'll develop investment judgment, which seems a very inefficient way to learn.
It's kind of like run around the oval 5 times and you'll no doubt get better at kicking and passing.
Yeah, but maybe, but like extremely optimistic, right? Like a lot of casualties along the way with that approach. And so, having done this for a number of years now, my philosophy is sort of like benchmarks and spikes. And so I think a founder has to be over a certain benchmark to be worth considering for investment. And that's the pace you're moving at and the quality of the team and your understanding of the problem. And then the spikes. All of the very best founders and companies have this outsized strength. And at the early stage, there's tons of weaknesses. I don't care. I'm just looking for the one magic outside strength. And I think that shows up in one of 5 areas. It's the team. It's the products 10 times better. It's the traction. They've invented something, or they have a really unique vision of the future of their industry. Tends to be one of those categories.
Interesting. As a high performer, rest isn't really optional. It's something you've got to do all the time. What do you do to taper out? And, what's your favorite time to sort of break away?
It's funny because if you think of sport, we actually spend tons of time resting. You will find me at a beach volleyball tournament napping on the sand in between games with like whistles and screaming and cheering all around me. And yet we come to work and we spend hardly any time training. We're pretty much performing the whole time. And we spend hardly any time resting. Like, it's crazy to me that you might take just a couple of weeks off a year. And so the lesson for me is like sprint and rest, and you need to build in those like tapering weeks in order to have the outsized performance that you want. And so I build rest in by going on 300-kilometre hikes in Patagonia, which sounds extremely restful, right?
I thought you were going to say you were power napping between questions in our conversation, but that works too.
Yeah.
Bit of micro sleep here and there.
Now, speaking of adventures, I have to ask about this. Richard Branson, you ended up on Necker Island with him. And from what I understand and what I read of you writing about it, you had a pretty bloody good time. How did this all come about, and just how competitive is he?
This may be the highlight of my decade, and we're not even halfway through the decade yet. This is an insane story. The Aliavia Fund invited me to speak at their offsite in the US. I was living in the US. And she is next door neighbours with the woman that put on this event on Necker Island. So you can't just go to Necker Island. You have to go as part of an event or a retreat. And so she was running this retreat focused around sports, business and entertainment and pickleball, of all things. Yes, I actually hold a bronze. You know what? I hold a bronze medal at the Australian Open for pickleball. We won't mention what division. And so, they're next door neighbours. And so when she's like, I'm looking for speakers in sport, she referred me in because I'd just done the Aliavia offsite. And at the time, I was actually in Patagonia. And I took this call about this speaking engagement from this hotel room with crappy Wi-Fi. I'm about to be completely offline for the next 10 days. And they said Necker Island. And I was like, I'm taking that call. And they gave me sort of an outline of what the plan was. And I was like, I'm 100% going to speak at this event. And honestly, so incredible. Like, what a pinch me moment to be on stage talking about investing in women's sport and where the opportunity is there. We did an incredible debate format. And then Richard Branson is in the front row taking notes while I'm on stage speaking.
Ooh.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I got to hang out with him all week, and that dude is competitive as hell. And to be honest, I will admit he gave me a triple beatdown in that we spent one morning cycling up to the top of a mountain. I am not a cardio athlete. I am all power. And so we're cycling up the mountain. He's not fast, he's 74, but he just never got off the bike. And I like sprint and then walk and sprint and walk. And we get to the top and I'm like, oh, thank God. And he's like, I'm just going to go a little further. Anyone want to join me? And he cycles all the way down to the other side of the mountain and back up like a psycho. And then we get on the pickleball court. And to be fair, he had a pro as a partner. And he gave me a beat down there. And then he's like, I'm so sorry that you've lost at everything today, Christie. Come over here and play chess with me. I said, Richard, I think you just want to beat me again. And he just like gives me this smug grin and he's like, yep. And he did. He beat me, triple beat down. And then I was like, Richard, you have a beach volleyball court out there. Why don't we go have a game? And suddenly nowhere to be seen.
He knows what court to meet his competitors on, doesn't he? Yeah. What would you say about presenting that founders need to focus on in their message? Because I deal with a lot of them where I'm not quite clear what they're trying to tell me. You do a lot of speaking that is just blows me away every time, and it's like, wow, yeah, show me the hot coals, I'll walk across them for you. What do they need to know?
It depends on the setting. So you're asking like on stage at a pitch night, or you're asking in an investor conversation?
Let's say investor conversation, because I think that's probably one that they want to solve.
Yeah. So a good rule of thumb is kill every adjective, right? If I tell you my business is growing really fast and the product's really amazing and everybody loves it and it's a multimodal, three-dimensional, Web3, TikTok, AI, etc., you are very lost, right? But if I tell you we grew 20%, we have 125% retention, we have this many users, etc., I'm speaking in the plainest English possible with no adjectives, and that's the clearest message, and it just conveys competence and authority rather than I'm trying to make this sound bigger than it is.
So sell facts rather than emotion.
Yeah. I mean, you are presenting it with excitement, but you're not spinning a story. You're talking about the real business. And so that's a good rule on the content. On the delivery, an investor conversation is almost a dance with these subtle undercurrents of who has the power. Mm-hmm. And the very best investor meetings feel like a two-way conversation. It's not you as the investor ask a question and they as the founder give the answer and we keep doing that. It's like I ask you a question, you come back to me, and then you're like, but you've invested in these 3 companies, so what did you learn from those? And like it feels like a partnership from the beginning. And so I always think that the job of an investor is to be non-consensus and right. But nevertheless, many investors are driven by the emotion of FOMO. This deal feels hot, I want in. Someone else is looking at that, I better look at it. And so having this power play dynamic work in your favor as a founder is like very important and quite subtle. And how do you drive that sense of FOMO in an investor? And it's like you have to show that you are high signal by owning the conversation and making it feel like a partnership, not a plea for money.
Mm. Fantastic. I would love to know, what's your next big goal? What are you aiming to be number 1 in next?
Wow. I've spent the last year trying a bunch of new sports and activities and feeling like a beginner again. And I mentioned earlier that I love that sense of progress. And when I go and play beach volleyball now, and when I go and work out at CrossFit, it's lovely because I have a sense of mastery. But also I'm on a slow decline, just getting slowly worse and worse as I age. And so now I'm trying to pick something new where I'm exceedingly crap and I'm on the upward trajectory. And so I've been trying like kite surfing and circus and jiu-jitsu and tennis and pickleball, and I did indoor skydiving and axe throwing and a whole bunch of random sports.
Haven't got to lawn bowls yet?
Oh, I'm waiting until,
That's a good...
maybe my next birthday.
Keep that one up your sleeve.
Yeah. I also haven't really got to golf seriously yet. So I figure I could start that at 40 and still make it.
Oh, gosh, yes. You can start it at 60 and still make it.
So the goal on the sporting front is to have more fun. Professionally, what's the next big goal? Honestly, I have a deep, deep passion for the overlap between sport and startups, and my career will continue to be at the convergence of these two things. And that takes many shapes and forms. I speak and write about athlete mindset and how do we take the thinking from elite sport and apply that to startups and leaders. But I also help athletes invest, and I'm also interested in investing in sports teams and emerging leagues and sports tech. And so I will continue to do things on this front. But mostly this year I'm excited to back some epic founders.
You're doing it on that side. I just want to finish with this. You've done a startup course involved in sport. What's the one if let's say I am Mary Meeker and I've got, 10 mil to 100 mil. Let's not muck around.
Yeah,
100
right.
mil straight at you.
Hand over your money, mate.
Yeah. What are you going to do?
In terms of pre-seed investing, or
no? What are you going to do as a startup idea? What's the one thing you want to see happen in this world that you think would change it for the better?
I give all of my startup ideas away for free because I just want those problems solved. What's the one idea? God, you put me on the spot, man.
That's what we do here.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for sending the questions in advance.
So this is just a volleyball spike, okay? So you just got to get both hands under it and get it back over the net.
To be honest, I think women's sport is an incredible business opportunity. We don't think of sport as an asset class in Australia too often because not too many of the sports leagues are privately owned, although shout out to Robin Denholm and her family for buying the women's NBL league. Now, if you think, how do you grow a sport and think about it as a startup, it is this flywheel of, okay, you have the product, that's the sport, then you have the media attention around that. Now, showing it on media drives both fans and participants. More fans, more participants grows the grassroots level of the sport, which improves the product. And so you have this like circular flywheel. And the more you grow that, the more income you have. Sport is not a complex business. You only really have 3 types of revenue. It's like media deal, game day revenue, which is like tickets and merch and hospitality, and sponsorship. And so those are the only 3 things you have to grow. Women's sport has this insane momentum, except you're in the media business. Media coverage of women's sport has grown from 4% to 15% in the last 5 years. All of that growth has pretty much been on social media and digital media and streaming, and almost none of it on major broadcast. And obviously we're still not at 50%. And so I just think there's this incredible untapped market with so much money to be made from an investment point of view if you are smart about how you invest in women's sport and emerging women's sport teams and leagues.
Couldn't agree more.
Given the way mainstream media is going at the moment, you could probably spend the $100 million buying all of them in a job lot, put them together and just broadcast women's sport 24/7, and I'd be happy with that. Christie Jenkins, great to have you on the show. All the best for the Techstars cohort. Good luck choosing the fantastic dozen that will be a part of 2025. And we'll catch you around soon.
Thank you. As always, incredible to see you.
Pickleball time. Should we go and play pickleball and then we'll come back with our next guest?
Sounds great. Let's do it.
All right, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Startup 360. It's time for 10X, our rapid fire questions. And our guest today is Justin Wasnage from Vloggy, a pioneer of the video space. Great to have you along, mate.
Thank you. Great to be here in the new format.
Yes, exactly. I used to have you, as I said, on Startup Daily TV, so it's great to have you in for this conversation. You're a guy who kind of feels like he's been ahead of his time when it comes to video and audio-visual for a long time. Tell us a little bit about Vloggy and, of course, your career previously before we get into 10X.
Thanks. So, definitely been around a while because it's easy to spot trends and it's easy to spot. I used to be a sort of futurologist. I remember I was presenting at a conference in the Gold Coast about 20 years ago, and I predicted that people would have like handheld computers and stuff, and and people just laughed me off stage. So it was it's easy to spot trends, but it's kind of hard to execute, especially if you're in Australia with no access to capital. So Vloggy was basically born out of a view about 6 years ago, and I built the prototype that actually. One way to get footage into the hands of marketers was actually by using people who were traveling, because it was based on the tourism travel industry at the time. If you could create a marketplace to actually transfer those videos with the rights to resale onto the marketers. And so that was the genesis. But then after COVID, we had to kind of pivot and stuff. And what we really realized afterwards was actually employee generated video. And I think the last time I was on the show, we were raising because we suddenly had a lot of interest in HR tech and education tech. And actually for the past 3 years, we've been powering the HSC, which is the year 12 exams in New South Wales. Anybody that does a video submission does it through our platform. Why?
Oh, wow.
Because previously the state government realized that the rights to those videos belong to Meta or to Google, and not only was it cumbersome, but there's a core ownership piece in there. So we kind of really doubled down last year on that whole thing around consent and ownership and provenance of those videos. So we've had a long kind of journey. You can call it pivots, or you can just call it making mistakes. I'm not sure.
But putting aside the fact that you nearly called it COVID at one stage.
We did actually, yeah. So in January 2020, we were playing around with names.
How's that for timing?
And we sort of said, what about collaborative video? COVID. And we looked up, and COVID.com was owned by this pipe manufacturer in Columbus, Ohio or something.
I thought you were going to say a Wuhan lab.
No. But anyways, as a result, so we didn't call it that because we couldn't get the domain name. And then I checked on that guy, and he was hugely minted from owning the domain name COVID.com. I mean, his sales went up through the roof. So yeah.
And I'm still not going to kick it off because I do want to go back to your early days around on-demand video because of the static business that you had. I think that was back in the 90s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Tell us.
It wasn't my business.
And it literally was video back then. We were still all using video.
So my first job after university was actually for a company called Static 2358. And basically what it was on-demand video. So they were the first people to invent set-top boxes for video. And it was owned by, it ended up being owned by Rupert Murdoch. Mm-hmm. But it was when he had a problem of, I've bought this company called Sky. Yes, and he wanted to charge people to actually watch TV and didn't have any technology. So they built a rudimentary satellite, there's actually a carousel. So the content gateways only opened at a certain time if the right encrypted key came up. First people to do that. But it was great. As a 22-year-old, I was living in London, and it was grimy East End sort of warehouse office. But then they said, "Do you want to come to Silicon Valley for a month?" Yep, I'll be there. And it was great. I mean, even those days, 25 years ago, they gave us $50 a day stipend to spend on whatever we wanted, and they paid for our meals and everything. And I remember actually, I was kind of in charge of the liaison with the big company we were doing the demo with. And once we were up coding all night, and we had pizza and beers, and some of the guys were smoking. And I got hauled over the coals the next day, and you could tell that one of the things was policy, one was personal, and one was just, he said, we have a no smoking policy in the office, and some of your guys were smoking. And there's beer, and we have a zero tolerance policy on alcohol. And they're eating pizza. Do you know how many trans fats are in that? And it's just sort of like very Californian moment of, actually the one that she cared about most was the trans fat in pizzas.
Well, we've gone through our first 5 minutes and I haven't asked a single question. I'm going to let you kick off our 10X and really give them a good grilling. About trans fats.
Trans fats. What's your favourite? No. So we spoke about earlier, you basically invented the term video blog back in 2006. Allegedly.
Yeah.
And you've already spoken about sort of being ahead of the trends and sort of, knowing what's coming next. I want to know what you think is next for the media industry. Okay,
it's atomization of content, which was kind of also the founding idea behind vlogging, kind of in a macro sense, was actually the content at the moment video content is finally becoming a commodity. So in actual fact, where we're pivoting vlogging now is into the idea of evidential video. In other words, video that nobody will ever watch, right? So at the moment, video is still about storytelling. That's why we're being filmed, and there's so much content out there. But you look at sort of YouTube, and a lot of the content only has 4 or 5 views. Imagine you can get to a world where 99% of the video produced is never watched, right? Why? Because it's evidential. So in actual fact, And then the atomization of that content means that there are actually elements within there that can be then used to either train models for generative AI or used in certain pieces of, actually, we need an Asian couple walking over the Sydney Harbour Bridge, bam, and there's suddenly the huge library of that, which nobody's ever thought to actually monetize before, because it sits in another application, maybe employee-generated video or something like that. So that's kind of... that's a fairly short answer, but yeah, atomization of content.
Interesting.
Okay, what surprised you most about what people actually watch on video? You've been on YouTube for 20 years, and of course that's huge now. It is the most streamed platform in the world, the most watched platform in the world. What's the thing? Is it cat videos or something else?
What's the deal like where you have a thing up the top which is like gel spewing out of a mold, right? ASR or something, and then you have the actual video you're watching underneath it, and then over the top you have a monotone voice explaining what is going on. And what it is this automatic generated, someone fed a script in, and it's just done voice to text, but people watch it, so text to voice, and people watch it. I mean, I've got 3 kids, and they watch utter shit.
Brain rot. I think that's the actual term. It's brain rot.
Yeah. But 3 different types of brain rot, because they're 3 different ages. Yeah. Actually, my eldest, he's 15. He actually does watch stuff like oversimplified and history stuff, kind of, which is all quite interesting. It's all, I mean, they're walking gender stereotypes, my kids, right? So my daughter, who's big into dance and ballet, she watches Next Step and all kind of stuff related, and then my youngest son, he's kind of into football and rugby and stuff, but he'll watch Minecraft stuff endlessly. And his big claim to fame was that this morning one of his schoolmates, and he's 9, made a YouTube video about Minecraft and name checked him. So that's yeah.
Daddy loves you very much, kids. If you're watching this, we just want you to know that.
They wouldn't watch this.
It's not boring enough.
No.
Not enough brain rot.
It doesn't have toothpaste squeezing out of a tube.
We need someone playing Temple Run in the background or
Yeah.
something. You've won awards in your, I guess, past life for short films and all the rest. I was, in the roller coaster ride of, creating Vloggy, what would you title your film, Vloggy, and what genre would it be part of?
It depends on what day.
Just try not to say horror right now.
just like film noir, just sort of, it'd be sort of black and white, a guy just trudging every day through like torrential rain. And every now and again, there's just a moment of sunlight and then it rains again. And there'll be probably just sort of 4 words throughout the whole film. Don't ever do this. Swedish, of course.
So you've gone full Bergman on us.
Yeah, full Bergman.
Okay, great. And I'm kind of in the same
Art
space.
Blakely soundtrack.
Yeah. What's the hardest part of being a founder?
It's that really. It's having the resilience to get up and just keep on doing it again. So, so we tried to do a crowdsourced funding raise in 2023, and just that whole thing of raising money and having to. But then the rejection you get, so basically what happened was that it was poorly managed and we'd spent a truckload on fees and stuff for this platform. But it didn't go live until sort of end of November. This was just when the first credit crunch happened. And then by the time, even though we got $870,000 worth of expressions of interest, we didn't actually reach the $250,000 of minimum. So we had to refund all that money. So it's just that sort of rejection. It's the constantly being rejected by investors who, if you're in Australia, obviously things don't get invented in Australia, really. There's the Hills Hoist, allegedly, Wi-Fi, and that's about it, right? So it's not really a country where it's a follower, right? So when you're talking to investors, they're never really open to new ideas. They always want to be like, okay, show me the revenue, show me who has done this in America, or, and it's just really frustrating.
How, if we sort of go back into that investment experience, if you were going to go redo your fundraising from day one, what would you be doing differently?
So one of the biggest mistakes, I'm going to write a book one day called How Not to Start the Next Unicorn. And it'll basically be sort of 50 things that I've done wrong. Definitely the first thing I did wrong was we built a prototype. We got paying customers, South Australian Tourism Commission, to pay money to prove this concept that you could actually we could run a video project from Sydney all about Adelaide and crowdsource the content from residents of Adelaide. And we did it and we proved it and they loved it. It's called Life in My Hood, all about different suburbs of Adelaide. And then, stupidly, we then applied for the New South Wales MVP grant and built an MVP, and we just spent loads of money on developing, rather than what we should have done was actually just do that 20, 30, 40, 50 times, get the revenue and then pay for all the development ourselves. Last year, we basically, I think we cleared the year at $150,000 ARR, which isn't a lot, but it meant that we weren't reliant on other people. We just funded every feature we did through customer revenue, which actually is what we should have done before going and getting investment, because then it just adds a level of complexity and
I want to pick up on the previous conversation. How do you personally deal with rejection? What's your resilience trick?
I just know that I'm right and they'll end up
regretting it.
I mean, that's sort of glib, but, I don't know, like Rampersand rejected me this morning, and I was like, right, okay, you'll regret it, and I guess that's my kind of inner feeling. But really, I'm very kind of relaxed, genuinely in life, which irritates my wife because she's not. But, I don't let things really get to me. I hadn't someone once described me as being pH 7, and if I'm really excited, which is kind of now, I'm kind of like pH 7.1. And if I'm really depressed, it might be 6.9, but I don't have these kind of huge swings of emotion, which is bad as well, because it means that at kind of Christmas time, I have to say, oh, yeah, that's really great. Thanks for that. I have to try and sort of bring out emotion. But
I socks, jocks and chocolates.
Not giving, receiving. Receiving,
yeah.
Sort of when someone's gone to a lot of effort and I probably don't express the gratitude that I have to learn. So I guess I'm just cold. Yeah, just be cold. That's the answer.
Chilled.
Don't have emotions.
Not cold, chilled.
Yeah.
Rebrand it.
I want to know what you love about your startup and what you love about being a founder.
Look, I love about the startup, I do genuinely still believe that that democratization of video in whatever form it is, be it storytelling, which is kind of the original thing, or employee sort of, what we're trying to build now is the kind of infrastructure layer of video analytics between employee sourced video and their analytics tools. So, which is less sexy, but probably much, much higher revenue. But whatever it is that using still, the founding vision, even from being video blog, was actually, could you use the video function on the phone to actually change the world? So that is still what kind of drives me. Still that fundamental vision that video will be, if you can unlock all the data from video, if you can actually turn it into meaningful data rather than just vision, so unstructured, if you can structure that data, then it can change the world. It is the most powerful form of data, but it's underutilized.
Okay, I want to ask you the toughest question in video. Landscape or portrait?
Oh, landscape. Bloody portrait. I mean,
see, I get shit from my kids all the time.
Yeah.
Because I shoot in landscape, and it's like, come on.
Yeah, but you got two eyes, right? They're there, right? They're left and right. They're not up and down. You're not a cyclops or something. Yeah.
No, kids. See, this man's an expert.
Well, in actual fact, widescreen's even better.
Yeah.
Which is not 16:9, but even so a widescreen like that. So with pillar boxing on the top. I mean.
There's a reason IMAX is not shot in vertical.
IMAX probably goes too far, but a 35mm, that ratio, or 70mm, even better.
Perfect.
I think we're out of question. I think we've
No, you got one to go, and I got one to go.
Okay,
it was just, I banged on a lot at the start.
I was going to ask, your early career, you're an aviation journalist. What's your craziest story from that time?
Oh, where to start? So we once took a so lots of stories. I've been to Mohammed bin Salman's house in Saudi Arabia. I once damaged accidentally the private jet belonging to a famous person by walking backwards into a antenna. What else? We once took a private jet down to about 800 meters above the Grand Canyon. So I once piloted a helicopter over Noel Edmonds' house, who was a TV presenter in the UK. What else? I know.
It sounds like we should stop before,
out,
just in case Cass is watching at this point in time.
I mean, he agreed, and he's a helicopter nut, so he liked it. I know that my blackout point is 16G because I've done aerobatic training, and we did all these different things, and in a death spiral, I blacked out at 16G, which is better than could have been 8 or 9.
If you could do anything in the world, this is the last one, at this point in your life, what would it be?
Retire to the south of France.
Beautiful. Done.
And what wine's in the cellar then?
Probably Côte du Rhône, or maybe down...
I'll go straight to the Chateau Neuf de Pape. You'll have the money.
Could do Chateau Neuf de Pape, or maybe Bourgogne, or the ones in Bourgogne.
Excellent.
The Burgundy wines are probably better.
Yeah. Well, Justin, I hope that you end up having such enormous success with Vloggy. You're buying nothing but domain Romani Conti. Thank you for joining us on Startup 360.
Thank you.
Well, that's it, mate. I'll explain those wines
I probably
later
left
on.
out. Should I say thank you as well?
You and I are still on Cote de Rhone budgets, but I like the fact that he was kind of quite austere in his wine choice on that one.
Full disclosure, I had no idea what you guys like any of those wines. I'm on the Aldi $8 rosés, so they sounded great.
Actually,
though. They sound
La Mule
awesome.
Rose, Aldi.
That's the best one.
$12. Fantastic.
So good. So
There's a good $12 Pinot there too, actually, at Aldi.
excellent.
Oh, there is. Les Argentins.
That's the one?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's crack it out.
Exactly. Well, let's go and do it now to
Pickleball
warm
and
up
Pinot.
after this cold week. That is it for Startup 360. I hope you have a great weekend, whether you're playing sport, whether you're drinking, or whether you're making landscape videos.
Or whether you're just watching the kids play sport.
Or watching the kids
Facilitating other people's joy.
or watching the kids watching videos.
Yeah.
I'll be brain rotting all weekend. So.
Just as well, Dad is chilled about that too. Of course, this is a Pinstripe Media production, produced and edited by the fantastic Matt Jackson. Thank you, mate. Thanks to Ella Walsh, James Vass, and Vanta for their support. Don't forget to subscribe to the show. You can catch it on Apple, Spotify as a podcast, and of course on YouTube in full widescreen mode. Surround sound, all of that, yep. And don't forget to subscribe to startupdaily.net. Have a great week ahead. You doing anything fun?
It's a long weekend.
Oh gosh, it is too. We've got Monday off.
Yay.
Yeah, I'm now moving into the sweet fuck all moment then of the next 3 days. We'll see you next Friday. Bye.